I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar on Gefen Digital Signage Solutions. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the 11th anniversary of 9/11, which I know weighs heavily on all of our minds as we remember those we lost and the heroic efforts of the responders on that day. I'm Kim Robbins, Senior Marketing Manager at BTX, and I'll be your host throughout this session. I'm joined by Chris Veros, who is a digital signage product specialist from Gefin. Chris is a 30-year veteran of the audio and visual industry and has most recently been involved in digital signage since its inception over 5 years ago. He has a multitude of experience with digital signage players, and he has the certifications to prove it. He is both an ISF-C and a DSCE. He has worked as an integrator and an installer, so he's been on both sides of the counter. To make this as interactive as possible, please use the question area on your toolbar, and we'll get to as many of them as we can throughout the next 45 minutes. When you work with BTX, you work with a team of people who take you beyond distribution. In addition to supplying many thousands of interface, integration, and systems products, we also engineer our own unique and patented solutions. We have deep technical expertise with Gefen solutions, both digital signage and signal processing. And our applications engineers and outside sales team are available to help you specify, purchase, then support your professional AV and broadcast needs. One of our core strengths is our commitment to education and technical support. We do everything from lunch and learns to product demonstrations to webinars like the one we are on today. BTX is committed to standing by our customers every step of the way. Our full product line card offers thousands of products to make implementation of your projects run smoothly. Among the many key integration building blocks that we provide are custom cable assemblies, custom plates and panels, video extenders, signal distribution, and cable management. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Chris. As a reminder, please feel free to ask any questions that may come up throughout the presentation.
Good morning. I'd like to thank you for attending. I trust everybody can see my screen. Kim, it's okay?
I see it fine.
Okay, great. Terrific. I think digital signage is a growing field. The original concept, of course, was to simply, or people's idea of digital signage was to take a poster and replace it with a TV screen. Of course, that is part of digital signage, but the whole concept is to be able to make dynamic signage. And as we've seen, broadcasting is going the way of the wind. People are not buying Yellow Pages advertising. People are not buying advertising even in newspapers. At this point, we are after narrowcasting, which is a really big part of digital signage. And social networking. With the technologies that are available to us now, we can actually do much better narrowcasting than we're able to before, which I'm sure everybody that's in any kind of technical field is aware of. Something as simple as Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter keeps everybody in the loop where everything is going on in fields and in objects that you're really interested in. The idea of digital signage, of course, is to take that information and put it onto a screen where people can see it and address information, advertising, and of course, to initialize a prospect or to get people interested in a certain product or feature. It's used everywhere. These slides, some of these slides are obviously dated because we all know now that we have digital signage in banks, cafeterias, restaurants. Everywhere you look now there's digital signage. And the markets are not getting smaller, they're getting larger. My goal here is to make you aware of other places that you can possibly use the product and how to market it. We see signage all over, and 90% of the time the signage is sponsored by retailers. It's not sponsored by an integrator or by a certain signage company. Things like kiosks in malls, architectural media, which is a really big thing now, building displays into architectural features of a building, either columns or walls, and of course retail store floor samples and floor displays are including a lot of it. The moving images attract people's attention. All right, companies that sponsor or build these pedestals or kiosks are more interested in the content and the advertising than they are about the player. So that opens up a field to us as integrators or dealers to approach these companies and say, hey, I have a new product that'll fit this, it'll work 24/7, it doesn't require certain connections or maintenance, and that's where our products come into play, and of course your expertise in your relationships. The markets, again, inform, advertise, educate, extend through every type of venue, including corporate communications. We've all seen the signs now as directories for wayfinding, cafeterias, common areas, even on warehouse floors or manufacturing facilities. A lot of them are using digital signage now, especially with qualifications by OSHA demanding a visual as well as audio information being transmitted across the floor. So signage can simply be, Mr. Jones, pick up line 32, or it can be evacuate the area because we have a spill or some other type of emergency. So markets, again, across reception areas, multiple screens, single screens, desks. We've seen the new sign-on screens that everybody has. It's all part of digital signage. So the idea then, of course, is why Gefen Digital Signage. Now, the main reason is that we are a hardware manufacturer that has been in the industry for many years, building distribution hardware for signal for audio and video signals. We pioneered HDCP compliance through the original HDMI 1.3, and of course going forward, or 1.1 and going forward, which, there were a lot of roadblocks and a lot of issues. We're at the point now where we have it pretty much handled and are just going a lot more forward with that. Carrying HD TV signals across vast networks is one of the things that we are really good at. Everything from DVI, of course, SDI for some of the pro applications, USB, FireWire, and even 232, we can extend for thousands of feet with our products. We have a whole selection of products that will extend information over Cat 5 and 6, as well as fiber. As an innovator, of course, we are a solutions provider. So not only do we give you the digital signage product, but we have everything else that will help you integrate and get everything done the right way with cables, extenders, switchers, splitters, and scalers. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Gefin product. And again, being in the forefront of the industry, we take product that we see and are able to manufacture it in a very short amount of time. HD-based T is a typical example of that. The new HD-based T technology enables us to send a vast amount of information over a single Cat 5 cable for 100 meters. It's being used, of course, through the industry now, but we were the first ones to bring it to market. We have splitters, single in, multiple out, single in, 8 out here. Our toolbox line is offered in both black and white, depending on your application. And what we have that's unique is fast switching technology, FST. I'm not going to read a slide to you, but the FST implementation basically allows the product to retain the keys of the different displays so that when you switch between sources, you don't get that blanking or the reacquisition of the handshake or even a flickering or delay. It switches almost instantly. The only other people that use FST is Crestron. So we have a $30,000 DM unit, or we have a $300 Gefen Matrix products that you can select from. Again, we have a whole selection through fiber, through Cat 5, through Cat 6, and switches as well. We had splitters that go from one to many. Switches go from many to one. So we have multiple sources with a single output or multiple outputs all controllable on your network via 232, infrared, and our latest ones even use IP or IP addressable. Matrices will give you best of both, multiple sources, multiple displays. This is our newest piece. This 8x8 actually has 4 HDMI outputs on it and 4 extenders built in. So for your remote displays, you can use the extender, and they're power over line displays, extenders, so you don't need to put a wall wart or a power supply behind the display. It's a rack-mounted piece, part of our Pro line. Again, just as to show you that we've been doing digital signage, maybe not with the hardware part, but with the extenders and cabling. We did get into digital signage hardware about 3 or 4 years ago, and we make a lot of our own product, and we also take product that's been on the market that we like, and we turn it into a Gefin piece by adding features and of course the additional support available through Gefin, through our distribution channel. So we have 5 players in our line. They're all available online for you to see at Gefen.com, and through BTX's catalogs you can see all the product. These are our newest products, including the HD DSMP digital signage media player and our 2 wireless players. One is a bump up, it's a plus version over the other one, and we'll go through some of the details on that. Again, as we mentioned, since we do our tech development, we build the product. None of it is Windows-based x86. It's all system-on-chip, Linux-based OSs. The benefit of that to you and to your client, of course, is that there's no licensing involved. There are no recurring fees. There's no upgrading. All of our software and firmware upgrades are included with the product. The other thing that Linux has or does that Windows does not, of course, is an automatic reboot after a power loss or any interruption programming. It will start where it left off, running schedules that you've already created on the product. Our basic entry-level unit, which is the DSMP, the Digital Signage Media Player, doesn't require software. It's really just an XML file. And people that are a little maybe intimidated by an XML file, we also have a CMS, Content Management System, that's available as a free download that uses a virtual machine, VMware. So it's very easy to manage. And as Kim said, we do have tutorials, we do have sessions on the individual products and the software itself. We can do web sessions, or even do a buddy call with you and your client and your BTX salesperson to show your client, and of course to teach you how this stuff works so that you can go out in the field and make it work. We all know that especially as tech people, going out and trying to sell something you're not familiar with never works. It's a major fail in my eyes. I mean, to just go out and sell a product and say, hey, it does this, without being able to tell them why or how it benefits them is a loss on everybody's side. These are just links to the CMS and to the software. On our site, all the software is downloadable for free. You can use it, experiment with it before you even buy a player. So to get into the product itself, this is our entry-level piece. And what we've done to enhance your marketability of the product is we've lowered the prices on all of our digital signage product, which you got the flyer on. Kim sent it out a few weeks ago and again the other day. This player has a retail price now of $299. It's a full-screen video playback device with the capability of playing Blu-ray quality video. The output of this thing is ridiculously good, and it also has composite component and of course HDMI with an audio output as optical as well as analog. All the connectors that you need on it to be able to use it. A lot of guys are just throwing it in the ceiling above a display or just mounting it on the mount behind the display. The control of this system, as we mentioned, is kind of text-based. And one of the things that you'll find with our players also is that they're all addressable 3 different ways. You can push content to the player. In other words, through the software or through your computer, your PC, you build projects or content, and then you can load it onto the player remotely. Or you can load it onto a USB stick and plug the stick into the players, and they'll either ingest it and start playing it, or You can leave the stick, in the case of the digital signage media player, the stick stays engaged in the unit. Or you can set schedules and have the players pull content from an external source, something like Dropbox or a local server, so that once you have these things set up, you don't need to have the user get elbow deep in the software. All they have to do is manage files and apps that they're very familiar with, like a Google iCal or an Excel spreadsheet, or just going to a file and saying, here's all my pictures from Picasso, and I'm going to just load them in, and they're just going to play at a certain time of day. So I know it's a lot to swallow really quickly, but all that information can be done and can be managed by our players in one form or the other. The reason that we have multiple players is because there are multiple uses for signage. The biggest error that we've made, again, as tech people and integrators, is that we really fall in love with the technology, and we'll go out and talk to clients and say, hey, this thing can do this and that. It can pull live RSS feeds. It can work with your SQL server. And the guy turns around and looks at you and with glazed eyes and says, all I really wanted to do was a PowerPoint, or I just want to play some end-to-end video loops. So the key factor is to qualify the sale, or qualify the requirement, to do a needs analysis, to sit with the person, find out what they want to see on the screen, how many screens there are, how far away are they from your source or your server, to facilitate, of course, proper cabling, where the displays are going to be mounted so that you can determine the size of the display. I've had guys that have taken little 20-inch monitors and put them up on the top of a 12-foot ceiling. I mean, you can't see anything on that. And then I've also had guys that have taken like 70-inch screens and are doing like basic advertising, which is also a fail. So you really have to evaluate a lot of that information and how far you need to be to see an inch of text, how busy the screen should be, what kind of content they want. This player is typically used, think of in the airport, the JC Deco 16:9 screens that are sitting on the floor playing back-to-back videos. They play 3 30-second loops. This is the kind of player that's in that, doing its high-def output and being able to be can call the FTP server and upload content at 2 o'clock in the morning so it has fresh content in the morning. JC Deco is not concerned about what kind of player it is, except that it's out there and it's working. They're concerned with the advertising dollars they're getting. So any displays that you see that are running signage, you can contact these people and talk to them about the player, not about the content. I mean, of course, you need to know what they're playing so you can select the proper player. But it's very important to realize that we're not missing the boat. There's still a lot of opportunity out there. This is
a question did come in.
Okay.
A slide before the last slide, you mentioned codecs. Is there a reason that you mentioned that? Is there something that those who are on the call should know of why one codec is better than another?
The reason that we mentioned the high bitrate playback is because a lot of players do not have that capability, or will stutter, or have a really poor a really poor representation of the graphic and not get your point across. The same way a good image can get a message across and make people buy a product or see what you want them to see, we can have the same kind of thing fail if we have an image that is using a standard display instead of a consumer grade display instead of a professional display, where you start losing your greens or the green panels get worn out and the image starts to look bad. We give a negative connotation to the advertising the same way. So the idea that we can use everything up to a 40 megabyte per second at H.264 video shows the capability of this player. There is a chart on our site that does a product comparison and tells you the different formats that our players can use. And again, because these players, you're not building the content in the players, you're composing the content you've already created. We've had issues where somebody tries to put content on that is not recognizable by the player. So just to show our maximum capability, we put this in here. But it can play MOVs, AVIs, a lot of other type of content. And again, you can get into details on that if you look at the individual tear sheets on these pieces. Does that answer the question?
I believe so. If another question comes in, I will certainly interrupt you again. Thank you.
Okay. So again, this is the XML format. It's fairly simple to use. It was a little intimidating when I first opened it up because I've never written code. But the way this product works is you select all of your media and you put it in a folder, and then you create a playlist. You put that in a separate folder. Then you create a schedule of playlists, and you put that in a folder, and then you just load it all onto that USB stick and plug it into the machine. So again, without software, it is a little bit daunting, but if you're managing it yourself or you have a guy that does web development at the client's end that can do this, it's just a matter of an open-close bracket with the name of the video that you're playing. So this is a playlist of several videos, and they'll just play in a playlist. You then take that playlist and you put it into a schedule and tell it what day of the week to play, zeros and ones, very easy. What time you want it to start and what time you want it to end. This is showing a 24/7 situation here, and it's going to play the playlist that's called playlist.gpl. So it's easy to manage. For people that are daunted by this or don't want to have anything to do with that, we do offer that free CMS. The CMS gives you more of a GUI that's a little easier to use, and it does step by step. It'll tell you first add your content, then create your playlist, then create a schedule, and the schedule can be, or a playlist can be one item or it can be multiple items. Then you can even, if you have multiple players, you can create groups, and then you create a file of each group, and it walks you through each of that, and then you just put those settings onto a USB stick and put them on the players. After that, you can address the players via Ethernet. You don't need to play with the USB stick anymore, or the files on the stick will tell the player to look at a certain site to refresh its content at a certain time of day. So this one is the most confusing as far as that programming. Go ahead.
Sorry. So is there a control capability within the player to allow for the display to be controlled? For example, powered on or off?
This one doesn't have that, but it does have a default content mode, which will allow you to put a null content or a null output on your video so that the screen will go to sleep. We do have other players that do have 232 control for displays, or can send out a signal to your control system to change displays or change sources or volume, as you go up in the line. All right, but no, this player does not have the output or the capability to control the display.
Thank you.
All right. Simple line drawing your PC through the internet to a hub, whether it's a local server or just a router hub, to access your DSMPs. And you can use the port on the player, USB port. You can use the high-capacity, high-speed stick that we give you with the player. It's a 4 gig stick. If you really do need more space than that, you can put an SSD, for that matter, a solid-state drive or any other drive on the unit. The biggest thing, again, is that we're talking about digital signage. You're supposed to get somebody's attention, or the goal is to have somebody's attention and make them buy what you're looking at, or get the information you're imparting in maybe 6 to 9 seconds is the attention span you're looking for. To put full-length videos up there is going to have people just stand there looking at your sign instead of doing something else. I mean, if that's your goal, that's perfectly fine. You can use an external drive. But again, the most part of digital signage is to grab somebody's attention quickly, impart your message, and then they'll move on. The next player in the line is very similar to the DSMP in capability. It is a full-screen video player, one zone, like the DSMP. So it's all full-screen video. This one gives you a graphical user interface that's a little bit easier to use. It has 2 gig of RAM built in instead of using an external stick. You can load a project on an external stick and plug it in. It will overwrite the onboard memory and play from there. You can't augment the memory on this piece. It's just basically just 2 gig. It is kind of bulletproof. We've had it in the line a long time. It's one of BTX's best sellers as far as digital signage components. This player is $5.99 now. It used to be $7.99. It's $5.99 now. And it is full 1080, does full screen playback. It does have the capability of putting a ticker or an image across the bottom of the screen so that you can label your images or just have a separate message on there. Again, supports all sorts of different video and audio formats. And another thing to remember is that if you're using audio, first of all, HDMI audio, or HDMI has audio in it. We do have an analog audio like our other players to go along with the VGA. You really have to consider the environment, where the player is located and what you're broadcasting. We had a client at a sports authority. They bought a whole bunch of players, and they started complaining at one location they weren't working in the afternoon. They kept turning off, and we couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't doing it in the rest of their locations. And when we went over, we realized what was happening was they were playing this short commercial over and over and over again. The employees were actually unplugging the unit because they couldn't deal with it over and over again. That whole negative connotation, I'm not buying sneakers from this place. I've seen this commercial like 200 times in the last hour. So you really have to consider it. By the same token, using digital signage in something for, in like a museum or a hospital for wayfinding or for a certain exhibit, it is very useful. So that this player does have that capability. We don't need to go through all the outputs. It does have, our players do work on low voltage, 5 volts or 12 volts, so that they're very green as opposed to some of the other units out there. Typically drawing between 2 and 5 watts. Think of a Mac Mini. The minimum is like 80 watts. I mean, I know my Power PC at home is like a 600 or 800 watt power supply. My project manager did an evaluation for JetBlue at JFK where we used our players and replaced Mac Minis. They had 20 units. We saved them over $2,000 a year just in power consumption using a low voltage unit.
Chris, there's another question that came in.
Sure.
So I wanted to know, is it simultaneous HDMI and VGA output?
On the DSP, no. On the DSMP, yes, all the outputs and composite are all active at the same time. On the DSP, it's either analog or digital. You can't see both at the same time. All right. This is the only player that's the case. The other players, you can use simultaneous outputs, so you could theoretically use back-to-back screens, with one player without needing a switcher or a splitter to separate the signal. Okay. So this player comes with 2 pieces of software. One of them is called Server Professional, where you find the player on your network and you can see all the information on that player. This is just a screenshot of my screen with my demo piece in here. It shows the IP address, the MAC address, and the memory requirements. It wasn't pinging it at the time, so none of this information is filled in. So you set this up first, and what's cool, what our project manager did was he put a video on the player, default video. If you take this player and just plug it in, it actually has the instructions on how to set it up on your network. Right, so it was really a good idea. So you can just plug it in and play and see how to set up your server, how to set up the your content managing software, and actually get it up and running really easily. So this is one half of the software. The other half is the managing the actual designer software. Again, this uses folders that have media in it. You drag content in and fill up these folders, and then you can take it from there and add it to your program. You work kind of the same way. You build a playlist, or you name a playlist, and then you just drag content in and tell it when you want it to play. So you have a whole schedule in here that, again, this is 24/7. You can highlight different days of the week and different months, and you can just put the information or add it to each individual item. So you can have one item play Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. You can have another item play Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. So you create the playlist, and you tell it when you want it to play, and then you put the media in that playlist. There's a tab for text overlay if you want to have overlays on the individual time areas or individual items, and then you can even add music. Again, you can download the software and fool around with it. It's pretty intuitive. It's not difficult at all. After you're done with that, you then select the player by going to the publish page, and then you'll see that other screen again, and you select the player you want to publish on, and it'll load the content on there. Now again, all of our players have logs.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. So can you layer content and have multiple images within the screens?
No, this is one zone, full zone only, full screen. That one and the DSMP are just single zone. The only thing you can overlay is the text bar or banner at the bottom top or sides. You can place it in a few select locations, but it is only one zone. All right.
Okay.
I forgot what I was going to say on this one. But yeah, see, this is the note. Video output is on HDMI or VGA only. So then we get into our Wi-Fi player. Now the Wi-Fi player has been taking off for us vastly because we took a standard footprint, which you might have seen around by some other manufacturers, and we Gefinized it. The boss went to the software developers, and we added capabilities with the N version, which is our newest version, which is what you would get if you purchased it today. We don't have the older ones anymore. Gives us the capability to bring in live interactive content. HTML5 capabilities are built into this player. It is also an SMIL compliant player. It's going to be a word, if you haven't been into digital signage and heard it yet, it's the multimedia interface language that's been taken as the standard for digital signage. What it was before, and if you went to the Digital Signage Expo or saw any signage at any shows, there are about 300 or 400 software developers for digital signage, and people go in there and they're just scratching their head like, what do I use? And you'll find that some of them are proprietary. They only work with certain players. I mean, that's the case with our DSP, but the output is what we're concerned with. Using this player, if somebody already has a Scala setup, which is a really, really powerful commercial-grade signage program and software, they have special certified computers, and they have a Scala school that you can go and learn how to use it all. If you have a project built from Scala, it's SMIL compliant. You can play that project on this player. So that's a key factor for scaling up, especially now that this box is only about 6 inches long. I don't know, it got compressed here in the video or in the image. It's about 6 inches long, 4 inches wide, and has these mounting flanges that are VESA compliant, so it can mount on a sandwich in between your display or on your mount. You notice it has an antenna. It's 802.11 BGN. There also is an Ethernet port. If you plug a Ethernet cable in here, it turns off the network connection for the wireless, so that for security reasons you can have one or the other. Or if you require wireless, during your initial setup you can set up the SSID usernames and passwords to secure it on your network. Now this one has 4 gig of internal memory, but it also has a little secure door here that you can plug in a 16 gig compact flash to replace that onboard 4 gig with 16 gig. Were you going to say something, Kim? No. Okay. Now the Plus version on the back has 2 other ports. You were asking before about 232 control. This one has specific 232. This RJ45 breaks out to a 9-pin 232 connector, the DB9. That will enable you to turn the displays on and off. You have to be careful with that. I found at Samsung you can turn displays off with 232, but you can't turn them back on because in their infinite wisdom it turns off the whole circuit board. So having a null output in your display capability makes a little more sense. The Plus version on this one also offers 480 composite input into the player that you can integrate into your display. Now, unlike the other 2 players, this unit has zones. We have and I can show you in the next page, there are a whole series of templates that you can use that will distinguish which zones are which. And then we have another set that it's 10 and 10 actually. 10 of them include HTML5 content, 10 of them do not. The built-in HTML5 content are things like this: Twitter, an RSS feed, news, weather, clock, calendar. Even an HTML page. You can pull an HTML page. So this player differs from the others in 2 major things. First of all, it's got zones, so you can put different content in different parts of your screen. The other thing is that it has live content. The other ones, you put content on a stick or in the memory, and it just plays from its memory. Of course, these do that as well, but you can distinguish certain zones to have live content, which makes it much more dynamic. We all know if you have a clock and the temperature on a display, people are going to start looking at that display just to see the clock and temperature. Hopefully they'll get the rest of your message while they're looking at it, but that's the whole point. People will start looking at it every day just to see that. Connectors, of course, again, we have USB ports on here. They come in pairs, so that's how come there are two here. You can use this with a project that's been published to a stick, plug it in, it will download it. The screen will say downloading the content, and then it'll say, okay, done, you can unplug the stick. The other thing is when you first get the player, you plug in a USB keyboard, and you can go into the on-screen display and set all the parameters from your output resolutions, aspect ratios, your locations for files. Like the other player, you can say, hey, go to Dropbox and pull your content at 2 o'clock in the morning every day. And this player will go out on the internet and pull that. That's a really important fact when you're talking about doing institutional work, schools, hospitals, government. Working with the IT guys at these places, we all know I call them the Committee for the Prevention of Doing Business. I mean, they don't want to know anything about what you're putting on their network, what bandwidth is it going to take. It just totally, violates their rules. Since these players play off their resident memory, and if you have them at 2 o'clock in the morning going to refresh their content, they're going to use no bandwidth. They're also going out, not going in. You don't need to VPN in. You don't need to get a tunnel through their firewall. You don't have to restrict the access at all. And again, for, say, schools and hospitals where the privacy acts are really important, I've had the IT guy just give me a line before your firewall. Put your own router on there and create your own digital signage network that they will not have any restrictions on because there won't be any privacy issues. And again, these are Linux OS. They're not Windows. They're not going to pull stuff on their own. They're not going to be able to transmit viruses or anything. They're self-contained. Will only do what you tell them to do with the Linux OS. Yes.
Can some of the units show live TV?
Yes. The first two units, of course, no, because they're single zone, full screen, off their memory only. One of the things that the HTML5 capability gives us on this player is the capability to bring live content or video into one of the zones. This is a screenshot of the software, but if you select this zone, it'll tell you what you can put in there. If you click this little add button, it has that list of widgets. One of them is an HTML page or HTTP address. I have one client that used one of the smaller zones in one of the templates and had a series of IP cams just scrolling through, because you drag content in here and you can tell it to play for 10 or 15 seconds and go to the next one. And they just had a series of IP cams going in there. With that same aspect, you could pull in a stream on an IP encoded thing. So if you're using an encoder like a Marshall encoder, and you can take your broadcast video and put it onto your network as an IP stream, you can call that IP code, IP stream in here and have it play in the window. Another thing that I thought about the other day, and Kim, we were talking before about there are no new ideas. This one is great because it was the idea. People are saying, well, how do I get live content onto the display? Every corner deli, restaurant, bars especially, everybody has a screen, and they're all showing broadcast video. And it irks me because they could be using this screen to generate income. I've done some research. There are specific digital signage co-op programs from Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay. I mean, the list goes on. And these players, all of these players, will log the information that they're showing. So you have proof of performance. You can go into a deli and say, hey, we're going to put up advertising for you, and I'm going to prove to you that within a month you're going to end up making more money. Now, one of the biggest things is that there is no return on investment on digital signage. It's a return on objective. Did the signage accomplish what you intended for it, what you set out to do? If you can attract attention to a certain goods or services, or get your information across and people understand that information, then you've accomplished your objective. So being able to go into a place and say, hey, you're just using signage up there, all you're doing is showing broadcast video, you can take that and put it, we're getting back to my original point, a lot of new displays, especially commercial displays, have picture-in-picture. Run source 1 as your digital signage and leave the main zone open. Take zone 2 as your broadcast video. Then you don't even need an encoder. You can just scale the size of your window, your picture-in-picture window, to fit over a specific zone on the screen. Not only that, you can use this one does have 232, so you could even turn off the display, or you can use external devices, your switching system, to have the advertising come on at certain times a day. One of the other big pieces about this is that you can use different aspect ratios. By default, it's 16:9, but we have 4:3 in here, 16:10. We have 9:16, so you can do posters instead of landscape. You can do a portrait view. A lot of them are using them on smaller screens outside conference rooms. This is so easy to use that all you need to do is just drag content into your area here and create a program that'll play. You could also toggle this looping program, make it a schedule, so that you can schedule stuff to play on a 7-day schedule. I don't think I have a picture of it in here, but you can, again, pull this software down from our site and play with it. Very easy to use. And of course, we have tutorials. Here's just a representation of what we're talking about. We have full screen video here.
Because there are a whole bunch of questions came in, so.
Okay.
So can you group devices to display different content packages?
The way it works is the second page of the software lists all the devices that it finds on the local network. So theoretically, if you have one in the lobby, one in reception, one in the cafeteria, you can address them individually by just clicking on them and saying, I want to load the content on this player. Or you can click multiple, select 4 or 5 players and say, I want the same content on all 5 of these at the same time. So you can address them individually or as groups. You can name the players so that they will sort alphabetically, and of course then put a group of players that might be in the lobby. Maybe there's 4 players in the lobby, there's 2 players in the cafeteria, and you can address them together. You can also, like we said, do the scheduling. So in a schedule, you can have it play a full screen video first thing in the morning, and that can be common to all your displays, you know, welcome everybody or whatever. Then there can be ones in the reception area that show a list of events. There can be one in the cafeteria that shows, you know, employee of the month or something like that, and along with broadcast video. So you can elect different templates for different times of day on any player. So yes, you can address them individually or as groups. Very easy to do that. This illustration was showing that that 480 input, but we realize that somebody who has 1080 is not going to be happy with 480 on here. So that's why the plus version is not as important at this point. Because we have the HTTP capability, you can just call it in on a stream and put an encoder in here instead, or the picture-in-picture as we mentioned. So what we're accomplishing here is we got video going, and then we have a ticker that's doing some advertising or hot wings or specials of the week. And then again, a slideshow, a PowerPoint, or a slideshow videos, or even you know, coupons or ads or whatever going up on in here.
Okay, great. So can you describe how to use the GPIO functionality?
Yes. How about that? Okay. The GPIO is a general purpose input-output is what it is. One of the templates has a 10 on it. This gives you 10 separate programs. What you do is you select the specific button, and then it's full screen video only. You can play content based on the button press. All right. So what this is, this plugs into your USB port, and it gives you 10 contact closures. You can use infrared switch. You can use a pressure mat. You can use hard buttons. I did a children's museum where they just put those large video game buttons on the wall underneath the display, and if you press button 1, you see ancient Rome. You press button 2, you see dinosaurs. You press button 3, you see you know, Disney World, whatever. You can select content based on that. In a museum, the same way, you can select different content. It's also good for wayfinding. I have a a corporate facility where they used a button for different floors to see the floor plan of different floors to see who was on each floor. It will default back to number one if you tell it to, right? This says play full duration, and what does it do after? It goes to program number one. So you can have default content playing, and then when you do a button press, it will play that content and then play it for a certain amount of time and then go back. So this gives us the capability of live interaction. I use pressure mats in a car dealership. If you stand on this mat, you see a video on this car. You stand on this mat, see a video on that car, of course on the same display. So that's the input-output device, like a $99 retail price, but it gives you that interactive capability that makes signage so much more valuable.
Chris, another question came in. The brand of player that this individual is using currently assumes that the real-life clock will be set by accessing the internet and a time server. Setting them manually is not simple. How does Gefin set the clock on their units, especially in standalone mode?
Well, the players themselves are computer devices, all right? I mean, if you unplug the player on the DSMP, if you unplug it and leave it unplugged for a little bit of time when the caps disperse their power, it will default back to 12 noon, all right? So it has to be plugged in to keep its time. In all the players, you have a choice of NTP server. So you can use a local server. You can even point to another player so that you can synchronize your content with other players. So it is addressed by actually specifying the time server that you want to use. This player has a battery in it. The player above it also has a battery in it. And I've had players that have been unplugged for months and they lose like 16 milliseconds. So the timing is not an issue. You just tell it the time zone where you are, and you just set it once the same way you would set any digital clock. Very easy to do. And you do that in the setup screen using the USB keyboard when you first set it up. Tell it what time zone you're in and set the time once, and then I've never seen them lose time after that. Very, very easy to maintain.
Thank you.
Okay. This is our flagship player, and this is really, really complicated. I know we're running out of time here, so I don't want to go too much in depth. You probably have seen it already if you've been using anything from BTX. This is their flagship for digital signage player as well. This piece is about 4 inches by 5 inches by 1 inch tall, and it does everything a computer can do. It's like the end-all for digital signage. These are the players that we used at the JetBlue that replaced the Mac Minis. This player can pull from the Ethernet full scheduling iCals, RSS feeds, news, weather, public announcements, and it's a free-form kind of construction on the project. It's not zone limited. It's not just full screen. It's all of it. It's like building a PowerPoint presentation. You pull in a box, you size it, you say, here's what I want to show in that box. You can control the layers the way you do in Photoshop or Publisher. Bring this to front, put that to the back. You can have a ticker going across the bottom, or you can have a news crawler like the credits at the end of a movie going down the side. It's full 720p output. We have an HD version that's 1080. But again, for signage, depending on who you're talking to, you're not going to really need more than 720. We did do some facilities where they used a really large screen, or we did work for Kenneth Cole on Santa Monica Boulevard where they used 2 of these behind 2 screens that were 916, so they had a 932 aspect, and they had runway models. And the 2 players were able to give them the resolution that they wanted just with the 720 output. Worked out really well. So this, again, multiple screen video wall project you can address with this. It has 2 gig of storage internally, but the key is that it uses SVG. If you're not familiar with SVG, our smartphones all use SVG Tiny is the engine. SVG 1.2 Tiny is the engine in our smartphones. It allows you to pinch, scale up an image. Think of a Photoshop logo that you send to the printer. You can take a little picture and blow it up to the size of a banner. Scalable vector graphics allow it to extrapolate the missing pixels so you don't get any jaggies. Because of that, we have really, really tiny files in here. I've done 40 minutes of end-to-end 720 video trailers, movie trailers, took up like 189 megabytes. It was like nothing. So it's a key factor with this piece. Again, small footprint, very low power, passive cooling, no fans, no hard drives. I've had units that have been installed for years with no issues. The USB port, which we'll get to over here also, okay, has VGA and HDMI with the analog output. These will run concurrently, okay. We use locking power supply. We also use monolock, which if you've seen on our site or through your BTX people, gives you a screw-on connector for the HDMI cable. We make the cables with this screw-on. The protocol for HDMI calls for a little screw, which you've normally seen. If you buy our cables separately, they come with a couple of these 5mm standoffs. Looks like a computer motherboard standoff. And you can just screw it in there, and then you can use our cables on that. Because we all know now the cables weigh more than the components half the time. Have the 232 connection. This little mini jack breaks out to a DB9 so that you can use, and this is bidirectional, true 232, where you can control content or triggers from another outside source, or you can send signal from the digital signage creator to close the blinds and turn on the projector when a certain video is supposed to be playing. The USB is a hub. Any HID device that does not require drivers can be plugged in here. External storage, mouse, keyboard, touchscreen. That's true. Interactive with a touchscreen with this player as well. Showing both outputs on it. You can put content on the flash drive, plug it in. It will then look to the flash drive and play that content. If you unplug the flash drive, it will look at its content or its onboard memory, and that's all settable features. The software that it comes with is drag and drop Windows based. You just drag your assets into the project, put them on the screen where you like, and then just publish it to the player. Full preview with a timeline, so if you do scheduling, you can see when things are going to show up and if they're going to show up in the right place on the screen. I mean, this is a tutorial in itself, so just to give you a taste of what it does. And it supports everything. Now, the guys that developed and designed this piece were the first people to bring video over internet. They're on the board that developed H.264, the 3W convention. The company was called VisioWave. They sold it to General Electric, who use it for military application. They know what they're doing. Their level of expertise with this, they've covered every possibility on here. And this list is old. They actually have AAC now for audio, so you can do Windows audio, Apple audio on it as well. And all sorts of images. The only thing that the players, and this goes across the board with all of them, is they will not do flash. The processing power required by flash makes it impractical, and SVG tiny, like our phones, will not work with flash. We've overcome that with the Wi-Fi player because it uses HTML5, which is the up-and-coming replacement for flash, of course. But you can convert most flash, in fact, automatically. If you drag a flash file into the working area here, it converts it into an AVI. If you take a flash video, it will actually has a built-in converter to do that. If you drag in a PowerPoint presentation, it will automatically create an AVI out of it, making it to a movie, and you can use it in your display. You just have to, of course, create it with rehearsed timings. So it's not looking for a keystroke.
Is the creation software included with each of the players?
The software is available as a free 30-day trial on our site. When you get a player, you get a license voucher that activates or verifies the software on one PC. It's based by MAC address. It's not attached to the player, it's attached to your PC. So every player comes with a license. We do have multiple license packages if you have a big enterprise type of setup. But again, because this player can pull content from a server, as we mentioned before, you can just have people or the people involved take a folder of images and put them up on a server, and then you can tell the player, go to that folder and pull these images and just play whatever's in this folder. So they don't have to get knee-deep in the software. So your content manager, your creator is going to be working with the software, but other people that are managing it, the receptionist just has to go to an Excel spreadsheet or Google iCal and put in the information, and the player will just play what's on that sheet. But this is the only difference on this player as opposed to the other ones, because we didn't manufacture this and the software, the Linux kernel was demanding a licensing fee. We've included it, it's bundled with the player, but you're not going to get, if you need additional licenses, you would have to buy them on this one. But you do get one with the player. We were talking about NTP server. You can call an NTP server for individual units, or I'm sorry, specific servers, or you can put a bunch of players in one place and call one the time server and point all the other ones at that one unit so your content's synchronized. And this again explains the software. There's no licensing fees. The updates in firmware and software are included, and you can download the software for free. If you want to play with the Digital Signage Creator's software, your best bet is to contact him or your salesman and let me do a short tutorial on how it works before you download it. Because you download it, it's not as intuitive as it looks at first shot. You'll get frustrated with it, put it aside, and then when you need it, it's going to be 2 days before your expiration period. So we can go through a quick tutorial, and then you can play with it. If it's like what you need and what your client's looking for, then you can certainly, you'll have a little bit of an idea of how it works. The other software there's no time limit on any of it. This is just an example of this is our welcome screen at Gefin on our reception area. This is just a static logo. The gold area, our project manager created in Adobe Illustrator just to create zones. It's a black background with this gold image on it. Dragged a video in here. Here's some Yahoo weather, live weather. Here's a live CNN news feed, real time and date. In here, I have this link to the Google iCal, so if the girls type in people are going to be visiting at a certain time or day, instead of saying welcome to Gefin, it says welcome Mr. Smith, your appointment is in conference room B at 10 o'clock. And at the end of that event, it just goes back to saying welcome to Gefin. So the girls are just using the Google iCal, and we're just pointing to the Google iCal with the player. So very dynamic. We just finished this one for the Lakers for their locker room. They want to see their standings. They want to see the next games, the times. They had an instant message center that the coach could punch in information, and an NBA news ticker going across, and in their colors, which really pretty. The HTML parser, we just grabbed the NBA news feed and just basically did a screen scrape and took the information, and with the XML code just sorted it out. An XML file looks like an Excel spreadsheet. We have column headings, win, loss, team, whatever it is, and then it's lines on a spreadsheet. Picture this as an Excel spreadsheet, and that's what it looks like. You just transfer it onto your screen. Very easy to do in the fonts, formats, colors, that you want to see.
Firmware be updated on devices remotely?
Yes, yes. In the software, well, this player, you would open it up like a router. You just point to its IP address, you see the player, and in the menu there's a maintenance tab that allows you to do a firmware update. It points to our server, we'll compare versions. If it requires an update, you can tell it to do it. Same with the software. The latest software is always available on our site. Most of the time, the version of firmware and software have to be the same to take full advantage of the capabilities. The wireless player, the Wi-Fi player, right on the front page of the software, there's a little button that says firmware update, and you can click that. It'll compare the firmware with what's available on the site. So very easy to do. And so once you have the player involved or on there, you can tell it to go and look online and pull its firmware update. We've created some new pages, a Gefen microsite at gefin.com/ds capital. Lowercase, for some reason, gives us 401. They're telling me it's my browser, but happens on every browser. They might have fixed it by now. But what we've done is we have all of our players listed. There are links to each player. There's a comparison chart that we mentioned that shows you the capabilities of each one. There's also the online catalog. For the DSC, we've also created some templates that I find more useful to backwards engineer. Take a look at how we did it, and then you can make it your own. Again, what we're aiming for is simple, not time-consuming, something your clients can do. Although if you manage content, that's a revenue stream. I have guys, getting $5,000, $10,000 a quarter from some institutions just to manage their signs, and all they have is their secretary punching stuff into a spreadsheet. So it is a revenue stream. So here's that comparison chart. You certainly don't need to go over this. We also have tutorials. I'm sorry, testimonials. So if you do a project using our product, get a hold of Kim. We can put your name and the product and the venue name, of course, with their permission, up on our site. Gives everybody some credit. All right. So the long and short of it is that with our core product and our digital signage products, we're delivering a complete solution. And the main part of that is the service. Between BTX's ridiculous level of support that they give you and ours working together, you can get a hold of any of us anytime and get answers to your questions. And I am available for tutorials. Ask him. We can either do a group session or individual, whatever is working for you. And all of our products is a 2-year warranty, which you're, of course, aware of, and 30-day return policy if you need to try a piece or to show a client instead of sample things. I think BTX has a sample program, but we can certainly back you up on that.
Absolutely.
All right. So thank you.
Well, Chris, I thank you so much for spending the last hour with everybody. We have some really good questions come through. We're just at our hour point, so
wow,
I want
good timing.
That's great. So all the attendees, if you have additional questions, you can certainly reach out to me. My email is very simple, kimr@btx.com. Feel free to send me an email, and I will certainly work with the folks with Chris at Gefin and those of us at BTX to get any questions answered. We did get some requests for pricing. We got some requests for the actual presentation itself. So I'll make sure that I make all of those things available. And we did record this session, so if you need to go back and re-watch any part of it, you'll have that capability as well. So thank you again, everybody, and please have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Chris.